Welcome back, Disney Twisted Outlaws. That was a small taste of my Hugh Jackman screams. You know what I'm talking about. If you ever paid any attention to Wolverine, X-Men, you watched any of the movies, like, it's been 20 plus years, you know that scream. And these, yes, they are the official movie merchandise Wolverine claws. If you stab somebody, it's going to go right through your knuckles and hurt you really bad. But they look really, really cool. These things are literally older than dirt. Stainless steel. Now, onto the comic. So, the Return of Wolverine, #1. And I, of course, got this one because my favorite costume, the good old yellow and blue that we saw so much during the 90s X-Men actual animated series. This came out in 2018, and it actually did the best. Of all the sales from that September 2018, it did the best with a total of, and I totally did not, there it is. It was #1. Return of Wolverine 2018 was number one slot with an estimated 260,411 units sold. With the #2 being Heroes in Crisis. I'd never even heard of that before. Guys, a total of 6 million something for the top 300 comics was sold during September 2018. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but to me, that's a pretty good, huge number. And I'm going to talk now with this thing in my hand, this dangerous weapon. So, Return of Wolverine, what was it actually all about? As this name implies, it's kind of like Wolverine coming back from the dead, you know, returning back from dying. This was back when Old Man Logan was very popular. Logan, the movie, came out in 2017, so this was kind of like the reboot of Wolverine. Now, I was huge, and I still am a huge Wolverine fan. I knew all about his past, Ray Fox, Lady Deathstrike, Mariko, his brother Sabretooth, all that. Like, pretty huge. Like, I was pretty big into it. Now, granted, not so much the comics, but the animated series. There's like tons of kids' books where I read tons about that backstory of Wolverine. It was a pretty big one. So, Return of Wolverine touches a lot on those. It touches a lot on the history of Wolverine's past. Like, basically, like, it was a reboot. Okay, it's you start reading it and you quickly find out. Okay, it's kind of like starting over again. Wolverine doesn't remember who he is, but he slowly starts putting back all of his memories. And one part of this, the comic book itself, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing because I want you guys to find it, go out there, get it, buy it. It's a great thing. He has images where he kind of like goes inside of his mind and he's talking to this African-American woman named Persephone, who we find out a lot more about later. And she's kind of telling him that a lot, like he has to remember who he is. Like he is not just some random guy that was brought back to life. But he is a hero known as Wolverine, and it kind of slowly starts putting it all together for him, piece by piece. Well, inside of his mind is like a huge jail cell where all these memories exist, and he has to go through and decide when he wants to unlock them. You've got Storm right here, and her like old, like kind of like it was one of those might have been one of the Apocalypse stories where she had her like mohawk get up rather than the Halle Berry more. Modern feminine hairstyle, or like the Storm that I knew and loved, the one that had like the full-on mane of hair, and you got to learn about her African ancestry and so on and so forth. And you got Sabretooth right here in the jail cell. You got, you know, not the best of friends, but the rival to his love, Jean Grey, Cyclops. And then you've got him in his old costume. He looked like a cat, kind of silly. And then, of course, you've got Mariko as Lady Deathstrike. This comic, he doesn't really unlock anybody except for one of his Wolverine personas, the older one, and you already kind of have a little hint to what exactly that was. So it was a good story. It was introducing him. He wakes up in a lab. He fights his way out of said lab after it looks like he already massacred a bunch of people, and then he fights his way to a camp where there's a bunch of scientists being held. And there he meets a woman who says her son was kidnapped, and that Wolverine was very famous. He's a guy that went there and he stood up for all the good people, and he was a hero back then. Kind of like basically setting the stage for him. And here is the little scene where she's telling him that he was the hero, and he was fighting against this guy in this crazy robot suit that was full of hate and killing everybody. And here you see Wolverine in my favorite Wolverine costume, the good old yellow and blue. And she kind of starts putting him back together piece by piece. And when he goes to the jail cell, close back then, he lets that Wolverine out. Not the weird kitty one, but the other Wolverine, the yellow and blue. But what's most interesting, though, is that Wolverine has a new power. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't too crazy about it. And I honestly, this thing was kind of silly. It's like they're sitting in a boardroom in Marvel Comics, and they're like, okay, we're bringing Wolverine back. Well, how is he going to get out of that adamantium cage that we put him in? How is he going to get out of that prison? What's something new we're going to do about him? Well, they're like, I know, let's make his claws conduct lots of heat and turn like super hot looking, like they're molten adamantium, and they're ready to, they can cut through even more stuff. They're like even more super powered and hot. And I'm like, that's really dumb. Like, I'll be honest with you, I love Wolverine. I'll read his comics. I'll read him to death, okay? This is kind of stupid. It's unnecessary. It also starts asking a lot of questions. Like, adamantium is the thickest metal, at least that I remember. The thickest metal in the all Marvel comic universe. So, in order for that to get that hot, where it's like bright magma, like bright molten, like orange and yellow, almost like white in the center, that would probably liquefy Wolverine. It would liquefy all of his DNA, all of his like organic cells, his real bones underneath, poof, gone. And if it's actual heat conduction, my question is how? Because, well, okay, this is thermal conduction, heat conduction. Basically is transfer of internal energy by microscopic collisions of particles moves electrons in the body. It means like he has to get all that energy of microns and electrons moving somewhere in order to heat up these adamantium claws at such a high level. That's a lot of heat, okay? I don't think he survived that, so I think it's kind of a silly new power. Anyways, so the comic ends with him agreeing to go off to this woman. Interesting enough, though, there's a weird thing going on. Like, he has one injury. Like, he has tons of injuries, but there's one injury he cannot heal from, and it's a cut on his side. And she staples him back up, puts them together, and then he agrees to help her as the Wolverine. But he does it under, let's see if we can find it real quick. Basically, this guy's right here. There it is. Boom. The big old shaggy, hairy Wolverine, the big old hairy masculine dude that these women just can't get enough of. They just can't get enough of that Wolverine in their hands. Oh yeah, they see him right here letting out his alter ego, one of his personas, the yellow and blue Wolverine I love the most. And then there's the one right there. So that's how it kind of ends number one. What I think about it, I think it was a great introduction to Wolverine, like bringing him back. I read the comics. I got all 5. There's 5 in the series. And I got them. And I'll be reviewing them here with you all. And I enjoyed it. Now, did I think the claws were hokey? Yeah, that was definitely a downside. Do I think the unlocking of the memories from the prison cell was bad? No, I think that was good. Because the big attraction to Wolverine 2 was the mysterious past. That's what made also like Hugh Jackman in all the 20th Century Fox films and all the X-Men films really popular, because he had like mysterious past that people kind of had to get to know about. And he was a crazy, wild, insane character. So for them to follow this path, a similar path again, kind of like, brings back the old Wolverine and the mystery. Like, is he going to find out who he was? Who's he going to make contact with? Is there any other X-Men still alive? Or is he going to meet any of his friends? How much is he going to remember from his past? So that part's pretty good. But the follow-through, I'd say it's okay. Now, would I recommend you get number 1? Yes, I do. Go out, find it, read it, or I don't know, if you can find it online different ways, go for it. I always believe in buying things, but let me see what you guys do. Anyways, big, huge Wolverine fan. Sorry if I screamed in your ear. I tried to warn you from loud sound coming in 3, 2, 1, so hopefully you muted it. Outlaws, we will see you next time. Have a great night.